Hey legal eagles, today we are going to talk about AI and environmental law, and we are going to talk about something that is really putting a lot of policymakers awake right now. And the question is, can AI be stopped from wrecking our planet? And we're going to dive into a balance between the AI's potential and the environmental footprint that the AI is putting in our planet right. So we're going to talk about it in three parts. And AI, its damage, the laws, and the potential solutions. And the first thing we're going to handle is the waste, the damage, the carbon emissions, the water consumptions, the energy consumptions, and the e-waste. And when you talk about AI being trained, AI training guzzles up almost a thousand water that probably would have been used by 1,000 homes in a year. A lot of energy being consumed. And when you talk about carbon emissions, there's a lot of carbon emissions when it comes to energy footprint. And when you talk about e-waste, we talk about chips, AI chips being used. A lot of AI chips. An example of an AI chips like Blackwell, for example, from Nvidia and many other chips. And these absolute chips may at times end up in landfills because they're not being used anymore, and they can leak some toxins that may have direct effect in our health and in the environment. We can talk about water consumption. We need water for cooling these systems, and in these data centers they consume a lot of water. Almost like in 2021, Google said they used almost 15 billion liters of water to cool. This shows that really training these data so that you can have a poem from Chat GPT or have a response from your assignment, or AI being used in health or AI being used in commerce is powered by a lot of fossil fuels. But we are going to find a balance on how we can try to handle the solutions and also keep our environment sustainable for us and for the future generations. And let's go to the second part: who is being held responsible and how. And we're going to dive into the legal landscape of AI now. Like I had said in my previous video, most countries really don't regulate this part, and probably this is going to be the next potential climate law divergent. And right now there are laws and that crumbling up to trying to catch up with this. And when I was trying to joke about something that puts lawmakers awake is the legal framework. I talked about in the AI Act in my last video, that is the EU's AI Act of 2024, that requires transparency about energy consumption and high risk AI systems. But then their article, I think it's 49, on self-assessment tries to put it down because it's the same people who are trying to train this data, the owners of this data, the same people who are going to self-assess. In my understanding, we should probably need a third party to assess. And is this laws enough? Do we have enough legal framework to handle this, or are we just reporting? When we talk about water being used in cooling the systems, I think early this year in Arizona, we were able to see the lawsuit on tribal water sovereignty being used by AI farms. Probably would this be a precedent coming up? would be a nice one when we come to see that. When you talk about corporate liability, should these companies be held liable? Yes. And to what extent and how? We we've seen a Dutch court, I think it was early this year. No, last year. No, I don't remember the timeline very well, but I saw that they were trying to file a case against Amazon for greenwashing its climate neutral AWS. So the claims came in. Is this something positive that we're supposed to say towards climate? Yeah. Should AI companies face similar penalties when it comes to the practices and their effects on the environment? Do we have the laws to catch up on it, and to what extent? So at least we have the EU Act, but does it cover the part on the environment? We're trying to catch up with time. I think Arizona is trying to put up a good precedent. I've also seen the United Nations, UNEP, calling for green digital transformation, which is also something really progressive, but to what extent is it progressive without binding treaties and laws? It's going to be slower, so we need to pull up these environmental policies to our laws, probably incorporate it in the Paris Agreement on data and many others. We're going to the third part, the solutions. So, where does law meet innovation? Where do we have to find a balance between innovations of AI and the law itself? And when I think about solutions, I think from the things we really have. For example, one, the circular economic laws. When I think about that, when I think about greening algorithms and governance, it may look as easy as that, but when you think, when you see the circular economies, we like the ones in IKEA is using to recycle, I think that can also be incorporated in AI, especially in handling e-waste of chips. We can try and incorporate this because when there's a new AI chip every time, the old one loses value and it gets to the landfills and again. So we can imagine a world where the old GPUs get recycled or get reborn to something new and being used through solar panels. We can try and find a circular way to handle this e-waste. When we think about algorithms greening, I think US is really trying to put up a way out because California had something about Sustainable AI Act where they try to incorporate tax hungry models with AI. So these are things that must be pushed more by firms to adopt an efficiency design that is good for the environment. And when you think about the global governance, we have leaders like my first video I did about environmental sustainability. We were not sure if the current president of US is going to get out of the Paris Agreement, and yeah, they were able to get out of it again. So we should find a way to choose good leaders and probably incorporate some of the digital climate treaties in our current existing Paris Agreement or treaties already. And we can also think outside the box and come up with AI carbon passport, whereby we can assign each AI model a passport so that we can track its lifetime. If we have a Blackwell chip or this AI model that has come up, XY AI model, we have give it an XY passport number where we can track its emission and we mandate the owners of the AI chip to disclose to the public the models they're using. For example, if it exceeds 50, 100 tons of carbon dioxide, then it's polluting the environment, and probably it has used 50. So whereby consumers can decide on whether they are going to link the passports with the regulatory approvals of how they're doing. They can decide to boycott high footprint models. That can be another way. You can also think about um, putting up energy flexible AI models where we train the AI models not like every time we put a season where we have a schedule, probably during rainy seasons in this region we will train this amount of AI, and then during dry periods we're not going to train. Or we can decide to put AI farms in this region because there's high abundance of a certain energy, or probably use a lot of solar panels during summer because there's a lot of heat and energy from the sun. Just trying to put up an energy flexible schedule in training AI. You can also think about the old school ways the one EU was using to try and push up their normative um, laws, where they use the carrot and stick, pulling up compliance of EU with human rights compliance and many others. We can probably try and do the same with AI, where we put uh, a marriage between the carrot. And when you talk about the carrot, we talk about tax breaks, we talk about bonds given by the governments, and the stick, like litigation and compliance, and 1, 2, 3, so that we find a balance between AI and environment. We can also think about outside the box and find like special codes to handle AI infringement and not AI infringement, environmental infringement caused by AI, or where we have uh, expertise in data and expertise in the legal, like both of them trying to put the balance on it. The company that is going to probably use those water offsets, they're going to probably restore those water wetlands as a means of putting up, like, you cut a tree, you plant five. We can also think about the communities that are going to be affected, so that we prevent climate colonialism. So let's get consent from those indigenous people. Let's involve those tribals, uh, people depending on those water, people depending on that energy line. We can also think about a means of putting up bonds. UNEP and World Bank may decide to come up with bonds that are attached, like green bonds for AI, as a way of handling it. To wrap up this discussion on AI and environment, we really need a legal framework, a long standing, to be able to keep the environment, to sustain it for us with this generation and the future generation. Advocacy and policy on the spotlight, and find a balance between law and innovation. That's the end of our discussion. Hopefully to see you on the next one. Thank you, and please subscribe. Bye.